Zach. Great to see you again.
It's good to see you,
Uh,
man.
so you've directed or produced superhero movies, zombie movies, fantasy movies, historical movies, and some others. But this will be your first foray into the space epic genre. So I'm gonna ask you a question that I'm sure will not be a first, but what do you want to bring new to this genre with, I would dare to say, a pretty picky fan base?
Yeah, I mean, I think that to me, I really wanted to bring just my love of sci-fi fantasy, you know, in a lot of ways, what this audience, I think, in some ways doesn't get very much of is original IP. This audience, which is basically the broadest possible audience, in some ways, because this movie is made for everybody, if you can think about it in those terms. Yes, I want fans of sci-fi to like the movie, but also, it's my dad also would enjoy it, and he's not a huge fan of sci-fi, trust me. But the idea, I think, is that I made this movie as kind of a love letter to the movies that sort of shaped my aesthetic, and my the way I sort of see this sort of space opera is definitely from the perspective of what I was kind of the movies I was sort of aesthetically created by.
So you kind of anticipated my next question because I think after seeing the film, a lot of people will be talking about the influences behind it. You know how the press likes to use punchlines like, it's Star Wars meets Lord of the Rings and stuff
Sure.
like that.
By the way, that's a fine thing to say if you want to.
So instead of
I don't think anyone
speculating,
would be like, "What? I don't want to see Star Wars meets Lord of the Rings. That sounds stupid." I don't think anyone would say that.
yeah, so instead of speculated, I wanted to ask you about this, but also, what do you think is the biggest Zack Snyder trademark that the fans will instantly recognize in the movie?
I don't really know about the Zack Snyder trademark, because for me, it's like the whole movie in a lot of ways is very particular to the way I kind of see the world. So it's not, I mean, sure, there's some great slow-mo fighting and some other stuff like that. But I still think that in general, it's very particular to sort of the way I like to make images, So there's that. But that said, I hope that when fans see the movie, though, they get this opportunity to kind of like be immersed in a world that they're not 100%. They don't know exactly what's going to happen. That's not, because this is original IP and it's its own thing. We don't have any rules. We don't have any. Well, we have tons of rules, but they're self-imposed. But that as far as where the story's going, it's wide. Anything's possible.
I would love to ask you about the cast, but I think it would take a couple of hours to answer me
It
about
would,
that. So I'm gonna ask you only about Sir Anthony Hopkins. How was it
right?
to get him on board, to work with him? And will we see more of him in part two? Was that final shot at the ending of part one a teaser of things to come?
So yes and yes. So definitely we're going to see more of Jimmy in part two. He has a big role in part two. Then and in the director's cuts, there's a lot more of him. And then I would say that Hopkins was a joy. Well, when we were talking about who we were going to get to play Jimmy, voice Jimmy, and I think it was Scott or Stuber or someone was like, "What about Anthony Hopkins?" I was like, "What about Anthony Hopkins? What do you mean? What about Anthony Hopkins?" I was like, "Of course. Like, Anthony Hopkins isn't going to do this voice of Jimmy. Like, come on." And we sent it over. They're like, "Well, let's send it over." So we sent it over to him, and we got the call back that he was like, "This is cool." And I was like, "This is cool. Okay, great." And then we recorded him first. He was the first thing we did. We recorded him. He did the entire performance. And then we had it and played it on set with the actor who did, because the actor is like almost 7 feet tall, who does the physical work on set, and he's 6'8", and like, he's thin, and he's just amazing and very athletic and incredible. But then we also have, so then once the movie was done, we brought Anthony back in, and then he got a chance to watch the movie now, and then re-record his performance over the top of what he had done before, to see if there was anything, that he saw now in the finished product, like in the movements that he wanted to translate back out into the character. So it was nice to have both, to bookend the entire production with Anthony at the beginning and Anthony at the end.
Thank you so much, Zach, and great movie. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.